Hello and welcome to the Green IT awareness session around managing local government sustainability through the development of Green ICT practices. My name's Paul Lahey and I'm the Service Operations Manager at Brisbane City Council. Part of my role and part of my portfolio is being the Green IT Manager for Council, and I work within Council's Information Services branch, which is the ICT area of Council. So just the first thing, as we go through the slide, Council refers to IT as ICT, so I'll use those terms interchangeably. The other thing, just quickly about myself, I got the role of Green IT Manager some 5 years ago when this sort of thinking was just emerging in the marketplace, and our CIO at the time said, you know, that would be a good opportunity for you to get involved and become the Green IT Manager. I guess my first question was, exactly what is a Green IT Manager? So in those days there was a lot of talk about the need for it, no one really knew what it was, and I guess my presentation will be about that journey from then up until now and some of the things that we've done as an organisation and I guess what I've been passionate about. So on the agenda today we're going to go through Brisbane City Council as an organisation, how ICT supports Council and its deliverables, the Green IT strategies that we've embarked on, how we've looked at what is a priority, what were our goals, the progress to date, so what have we actually achieved, and then we're going to look at a bit of a case study around what we've done within our data centre environment and our desktop environment as being probably our two major focus areas within Council, and then what's next for us, so what's on the roadmap ahead. So Brisbane City Council is an organisation. It's a very large council. It's the largest local government agency within Australia. It's won many awards. It is a very strong brand, so when we talk about Brisbane City Council, most people understand what we're talking about. We service 1 million residents and we have a rather large workforce of some 8,000 employees. We have a lot of public-facing services, public libraries, swimming pools, community halls, buses and transport, very complex, very diverse business. So from a sustainability point of view, Council has been very focused on Green IT as part of its future visions for things like Council 2026, having a carbon neutral city. So we do play a role as ICT, and I think that's a major point I'd like to make. And in our role, I guess within sustainability within Council, we have been doing other things like planting trees. We've planted up 2 million trees over 78 sites within the city in just over 4 years, and we've moved to 100% green power in 2010. So some significant achievements, and I guess my point is, as part of that journey, IT has had an input, visibility, and has been part of the overall Council process, which is really exciting for an IT organisation. So our drivers. So obviously we're watching and very keen to observe what's happening within the industry, and obviously across Australia, energy matters. Power consumption over the last 5 years since Y2K has been doubling every 5 years, and it's on track to do that again. So I don't think there's any surprises there. Our desktop computing environment consumes nationally some 100 billion kilowatts and has obviously a high cost. Council, as I said before, we have a very large desktop fleet, some 7,500 PCs, of which we have 250 odd laptops, we have 150 high-end workstations, so it's a big focus area for us. Same as our data centres, we have 2 large data centres, about 0.5 megawatt of power usage, and you know, we have a very strong focus on how we manage that environment and how we look to reduce our footprint and our costs. The other thing I'll touch on is as we move forward about how we work with the business to achieve some of these things. They are hard conversations to have. We are seeing things like making decisions about what's turned on in the data centre. We do have a data centre within a rural setting, within a suburban setting, I should say, and we are constantly talking to other providers like Powerlink who maintain the grids about our demands in that area. And obviously data centres nationally is certainly an area that's focused on because it's such a large user of energy. So within council itself, and the thing where we started was, you know, what are our drivers? What do we actually want to achieve over time when we started this journey? And obviously some things stand out. Firstly, you know, we're looking very much at reducing our carbon footprint, and a lot of that, some of that is driven by legislative requirements. Watching the market, looking for opportunities, and complying to upcoming legislation. So when a new legislation comes out, and we'll talk about some of that later, council looks at, you know, is it applicable to us, obviously? Secondly, even if it isn't, would we comply to that? We obviously have a high business driver around reducing costs, and council, like any other organisation, goes through lots of challenges through the budget cycle every year. We have unforeseen costs, like we had a flood a couple of years ago, which really does impact our bottom line. And from my point of view, Green IT has a place in that, in reducing our costs. Setting direction for ICT procurement and sustainability. We have a very strong focus in our procurement about the way we source and we buy ICT products from our suppliers, and making sure through the process, through the selection process we go through, that our suppliers have some sort of sustainability ethos, that they actually deliver on their promise. You know, those are the sorts of things we look at. Building our corporate knowledge and experience in Green IT initiatives. Council has supported me as an individual, as an employee, and others, working in groups such as the e-waste working group, the Clean Energy Future Working Group. So there's been a number of opportunities which council has supported, which has been wonderful for my development, and I encourage any of you to get involved in things like this from that point alone, just getting out, working within this industry, meeting people, working on these sorts of issues. And obviously, one of our goals from an organisational point of view is around our corporate social responsibility, efforts, brand, and we'll talk about where that's taken us, and we'll talk about the FITS award and things like that. But the big point here is people feel good about making a difference in the environment, within their workplace, so it's really good for people's morale. When I talk about this sort of thing internally, people are very enthusiastic about getting involved, so it really is a bit of a win-win. So within council, some of our key challenges, I guess probably the biggest thing we came up against is things like, especially within the data centre environment, making changes that have a business impact. So looking at what's running in our data centres, doing an audit, and deciding whether all of those servers need to be turned on, or whether some of those could be turned off to save that use of energy, and the impact that has on the business. So these are things like non-production environments that may not be needed after hours that we could potentially shut down. They may have impacts on things like our BCPs and business times to recover services. So there is some risk, there is a lot of discussion to be had there. And I guess my point here, it's not just about the legislation, it really is working with the business and what we've called a statement of intent. So that thing, the statement of intent, has to be something that EMT or the executive management team buy into. So IT can't do this alone, Green IT. The organisation may have goals around sustainability, but we all have to be working together. Some of our economic considerations. We talked a bit before about the doubling power costs. What does that mean from an ICT point of view? Well, to us, we are very much in this period where the cost of the electricity and the cost of the energy usage is starting to cost more over a total cost of ownership of an IT asset like a server than actually procuring the server. That has real challenges in itself. And as I said before, our data centre is an area we've really looked closely at, and the way we procure our services and our ICT infrastructure is very high on our agenda, specifically because of those sorts of changes. So as we buy kit, it gets better and better. It's smaller footprint, but very much higher use of power, things like that. So within council as an environment, we looked at some key areas, as I've said, the desktop type area, our printers and MFDs. So as an example, we've rolled out MFDs, we've taken printers off people's desks, and we now have 2 or 3 printers per floor that are a shared resource. They're set up with things like, you know, auto shutdown, things like that you'd expect on a desktop SOE. We've looked a lot at our data centres, and obviously at the bottom line is that our costs of running this infrastructure equates to a fairly staggering 1.45 million per annum of electricity charges, which again equates to about 4,000 tonnes of CO2. So the way, once we sort of knew what our drivers were, we then embarked on a plan, and we did things like, obviously we did stakeholder analysis plans, and we started to define, you know, who we needed to engage with and how we were going to engage. And we used this Gartner model and the 10-point plan, and pretty much, I'm not going to read through it all, but you know, we started with analysing what we did today, benchmarking. We took it that a big part of this is a behavioural change. It really is about greening staff. You can do all the work you like within IT, but if the staff don't change or support it, then it may be of lesser benefit. We've talked a bit about switching stuff off that's not in use. We've talked about some of these things, and I guess the point for all of this is that it really is about the cultural and the people change, probably more than the IT component, and it really is about working with the right stakeholders and getting visibility at a senior level to actually get your plan in and working and supported. So I guess I'm going to go into a bit more detail now, and I guess the main areas that I'm going to cover. Design, as I said before, we've done a little bit of work in that space. We've had we don't do a lot of work in the manufacturing space, obviously, but we do try and influence that through making sure through our procurement cycle, when we go to market, that our suppliers have those sorts of things we're looking for around sustainability. Most of our work obviously is in the bottom quadrants, which is around operation, looking to make sure that we're running efficiently, and it's also about disposal. We've done a lot of work in this space about refurbishing old systems. We've done a lot of work around e-waste and the way we dispose of waste as a council, and you know what we expect from our suppliers in that space. So we'll start with our data centres. As I've said, we were very conscious of shifting from an always-on approach and always being available to turning off kit that wasn't in use. And I guess some of the little benefits we've had through that, as we do an audit, you know, often you'll find within your data centres servers, and some people don't even know what they do anymore. They should have been decommissioned, and so you do that bit of a clean up. So you get a quick win straight away. The other thing, council, certainly when I started this journey, was starting down the virtualisation road. We've done a lot of work in that space. As I said, we have moved to renewable non-carbon energy sources in 2010. One of the things we did within the data centre, there was a business case around the roof out at our suburban data centre. It's a flat roof, and in Queensland that presents its own issues and risks. And there was a business case to actually put a new roof over the data centre. One of the things I guess I'm proud of is Green IT, where we fitted in, was we actually added to the weight to that argument and that business case to actually build some insulation. So we actually got the new roof approved, and I guess just having that visibility and asking the questions about what does this mean from an environmental and an energy point of view, when you add that to the discussion, it might be just enough to push something over and get it approved through the budget process. We've done a lot of work on our design within our data centres. We obviously have hot and cold aisles, things like that. and we're looking at next steps as we go a bit further down about having those aisles curtained and things like that. So again, we've done work in that space. Even little things like the water output from the computer room air conditioners, using that to water the garden. So just little things. We've increased the temperature within our data centres, which I believe a lot of organisations are doing now, but we did this some 5 years ago. And more recently, we'll talk about this, achieving the FITS accreditation around our data centre operation. So that's what we've done. One other thing that we've done is, as we did some of this work, we looked at our power bills. Often in IT organisations, the area that consumes the service doesn't always get to see and pay for the service. They may just get a portion of the power bill. In our case, we just got a portion. When we actually went back and looked at the bills and worked with the area that paid those bills, we actually identified an opportunity just by moving the tariff that we were on to actually make a saving. So by moving the tariff from what we were on to a tariff that, because our demand didn't change a lot, saved us $70,000 a year in costs. And again, it's probably not a large amount when you look at our total spend, but it's the little things that tend to make up and at the end of the day, contribute to awareness in your brand. So next steps for us, we're looking at our power and cooling capabilities within our data centres. So some of this stuff is older, 1990s type technology. We're looking at, you know, improving that sort of thing. Around our desktop fleet. So when we looked at our desktop fleet, we have a number of areas where we can improve. We know for a fact, we did some baselining with an external supplier. We know for instance that 70% of our PCs are left on by staff over the weekend. 85 PCs are left on overnight. So they're things that is easy from a point of view to implement policy through IT, but obviously has, in some cases, direct business impacts and tends to get business areas offside. So our focus really is moving forward about how do we take those things and actually want to make those changes for themselves to be part of this thing that is around improvement, it's around saving costs, it's around feeling good about coming to work. So old habits die hard. I guess the best way to change those old habits is get people to see the need for change. So we currently have PC power management options, but they are somewhat centrally managed, but at the end of the day, it still goes back to IT policy. They're some of the things we're looking at. Things like creating awareness around the CO2 emissions. So one of the things you can do that we've done, we have fact sheets that are up on our intranet site, and they really do spell out to staff what it means, what the savings are when you turn PCs off, what does that equate to in emissions, things like that. I mean, for me, that's the first step. Things like perception that screensavers save energy. We probably know in IT that's not the case, but that is a perception out there in our organisation anyway. And again, fact sheets, when we send out things like across the organisation, we'll send out magazines and things, getting an article in there every now and again. Okay, the next topic that I'd like to just cover off on is e-waste. So Council did a lot of work within e-waste, and we obviously had a bit of an agenda there, as obviously we run refuse stations. We implemented e-waste facilities within those refuse stations within Brisbane City Council. But we wanted to do more than that, so we actually set up the e-waste working group. It had representatives from AIM, AIIA, ACS, Australian Computer Society, number of other councils, things like that, to actually start state government, EPA. So lots of name dropping. So tried to get people together to start thinking about how do we take this approach and I guess infect other areas, and what challenges are they having. So we were very much focused on rolling out what we'd done in the Brisbane area, CBD area, to other local councils in the area. Then we looked at where can we go from there. So across Queensland, what are the opportunities? What are the issues when you don't have the same? We have different logistical issues, obviously within a city like Brisbane. Then you might have out more in a western type small town. It's hard to get those things recycled. Those sorts of facilities may not be there. So we did a bit of work in that space, and I guess I'm quite proud to be part of that. And it's an opportunity that obviously opens up when you do a role like this. And Council's been very focused on what we call towards zero waste philosophy, which is our policy, and it's really focused on product stewardship. So when we buy equipment, we're looking for those suppliers to take back their at the end of its life maybe, to recycle that. But then again, we looked one step past that and we started talking about these things like cradle to cradle. So for us, what drives our organisation is discussion around, at the end of its useful life within IT, what's next for that ICT asset. And there's so many examples where we've looked at this sort of thing around telephones and PCs, and I'm just going to touch on one that came out of that sort of discussion. So this is part of what I believe to be a working example of cradle to cradle. As an authorised Microsoft registered refurbisher, Council takes about 150 PCs a year, and we have Microsoft's endorsement to install licensed Microsoft operating system on those PCs to be donated back into the community. So this is obviously hardware that's coming to the end of its useful life within Council, and then what we're looking to do is take that and give it to someone that can really use it. And we are very much aimed at community organisations, and really to establish that working together within the local community, supporting our non-profit local charities, things like that. And this has really been driven a lot by Brisbane Lifestyle, which are very much involved in working with the community, and I guess supported by ISB. So again, it's just another example where it's been good to be part of those sorts of discussions and where that's gone, and proud to present this sort of stuff and working with the business. So where are we today? We obviously have adopted a number of environmental management standards. We've got roles in place, and on one of those roles where there's accountability for this sort of thing within Council. We're very much focused on being a carbon neutral city by 2026, and as part of that, BCC as an organisation has moved to green power. Recently, we're going to talk about in a minute, the FIT sustainability, and we've adopted a number of measurement and energy strategies. We've adopted those as policies, but we don't yet have full capability to measure some of those things. Some of those things we do. We're quite good at measuring things like fuel usage for our buses and things like that, but not so much power at this stage. So FITS, so the Foundation for IT Sustainability, we worked with those guys and an independent auditor, BDO Kendalls. In February 2012, we actually went into an agreement because we achieved their award for a 2-star for enterprise computing and a 1-star for establishment of these practices. And I guess from my point of view, to be part of, I was the sponsor for that project, and I guess what I'm proud of about this is FITS, like the National Heart Foundation. It's not a tick you can buy, you have to earn that tick. And I guess from my point of view, again, it just adds to Council's brand. It adds to, you know, it supports Council and me when I go to talk to stakeholders about, you know, we do take this stuff seriously. It also provides for Council to get involved more and more in sharing information and working with other organisations. So I guess from my perspective, there are a number of opportunities that have come out of that. And I guess I can't say enough what that means to an organisation like Brisbane City Council as a political organisation. Winning something like that and saying we've got, so I should say, our council has a award-winning data centre as an example, adds so much weight to a business case. When it goes up for endorsement and we want to spend some money, having those sorts of awards really helps and encourages support at a very senior level. So MEPS, so the minimum energy performance standards, so they are obviously emerging and will take effect from October 2013. And obviously council's taken a strong interest, again, in what does this mean for us? From my point of view, I'm very interested in things like computers and monitors and what that means for council. I've just referenced some information you can download in your own time. But I guess the point is there's always this emerging technology coming out, emerging legislation coming out to the market. And we always have to be looking for that. And the more as organisations we work together, and as I said before, when you start working with other agencies and things like that, sharing this sort of information, keeping us all up to date is a great way to support these kinds of initiatives. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. I'd like to make the time just to give people the opportunity. Obviously you can't ask me questions, but I am very much available through my email address here at Council. I also can be contacted, or actually the ACS Green IT awareness group is very much able to be contacted through this website here. And I guess from my point of view, I encourage people to get involved. For me, it's been a win for me, so it's a win-win. I've been lucky enough to be involved and work with people that have really made a difference to my working career. People like Phil Nyson from the ACS, people like Mark Winter from FITS, these sorts of people that sort of motivate you to want to do better all the time and get involved. I think is really something you just can't get from coming to work 5 days a week. Obviously you're looking for a win for your organisation and customers, and again in my case being able to contribute to what's going on within the organisation, being able to influence and work with other business units and the way they deliver services to their customers is again really is a win. And finally, the win to our industry and the environment. I think it's a great time for ICT practitioners to work closer together. We have been and probably will continue to go through some hard times. But I guess from my point of view, this really is a great opportunity to work with like-minded people on improvement and things that can be a lot of value to our organisations and really represent IT. So traditionally, IT may not have been seen in the lead, but from this perspective, Green IT, we very much can be in that lead role, working with the business and getting the sort of support and the kudos that I guess that comes along with that. So again, I'd just like to thank you, and obviously anything within this presentation I'm happy to provide if you contact me. I've got things like, I'm happy to share information, so I make that freely available, so thank you.